And now the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. Here is the high altar. And below us under here, just on the opposite side of this wall, is where Anne Boleyn, Catherine Howard, Anne Boleyn's brother, and many other people are buried. But Anne Boleyn and some of the more notable ones are buried at the altar. Please do not use this tomb as seating, thank you. I think I can civilised enough to refrain from doing that. Yeah, it's a beautiful one, this old church. Very plain and simple. By the time Queen Victoria's reign came along, the floor was collapsing, and Queen Victoria, upon visiting the church, complained about it. When they set about putting it right, they found the remains of over 1,700 people buried beneath the floor, Anne Boleyn included. So, in we go. That's our little tour in there. You have to be a little bit careful because they don't ban filming, but they don't encourage it, put it that way. A little bit of the history of the church. There's been a chapel on the spot to your left for 1,000 years. King Henry VIII built the current chapel in 1520 after the original burned down. It is still a working chapel with regular services. Many of the tower's former residents, some of the executed prisoners such as Anne Boleyn, are buried in the chapel beneath the are buried in the chapel or beneath the grass outside. Sorry, because I'm reading it on screen and then, yeah, as I said, in Victorian times the floor of this chapel started collapsing and sinking, shall we say, and Queen Victoria, upon visiting the chapel, was not very pleased with it. One of her "we are not amused" moments, and well, she ordered that restorations were to happen on the church, and when that occurred, the bones of over 1,700 people were found. So on to our next little bit. So we'll get some better exterior views of the church and its churchyard. You don't think of the Tower of London having a churchyard, but there are people buried under this grass, and this is what constitutes the churchyard of the parish church of St Peter ad Vincula. And Anne Boleyn, as I say, is buried under the high altar at this end, and she's buried to the left, which is what I pointed out. You can't get too close because it's fenced off, cordoned off. But yeah, and this is the site of where the block was located, where Anne Boleyn and many of these people that we're going to see lost their lives. Lord Guildford Dudley was the husband of the 9 days Queen Jane Grey. His father and her father basically executed the plan to take over the throne through their children, and they more or less all ended up paying their lives for it. The only ones that really got away scot-free were Jane Grey's mother, Lady Frances Brandon, who by all accounts was not the nicest of mothers. Robert Devereux, Earl of Essex, Elizabeth I's last great favourite. And many, many more. Because don't forget, it isn't just prisoners buried here. If you worked or lived within the tower, this was your parish church, so you would be buried in the parish, either inside the church or in the churchyard outside. So that's why it accounts for so many people, because they're not all prisoners buried there. Yeah. And it was Queen Victoria that ordered the memorial for Anne Boleyn and the others, that on the altar, the decorative altar pavement which incorporates the memorials. They had no memorial before that. And Anne's bones, they was able to find, when they dug, she was about 2 foot below, so not deep. Originally, when the execution occurred, she was buried in an arrow chest because a coffin hadn't been prepared for her, so she was buried in an arrow chest. But by the time the Victorians got to the grave, when the floor had to be taken up, this is in the 1870s, her bones were in one neat pile over to one side, because obviously other burials had occurred in the time of, since Anne Boleyn and the Victorian era, so, and churches, as I've said before cemeteries were often reused and graves were often reused. I mean, many churches had a charnel house, and some crypts or vaults under the floor, some of them even have charnel pits, so that when the nastiness as it is, coffins and bones had rotted away of one lot, they could be put in the charnel pit, and then the new lot could be moved in. But there we are. That is the Chapel of St Peter ad Vincula, which has seen a hell of a lot of history. That's the Tower of London. And this is the site where the block was. And this is the Beauchamp Tower over there, where the Dudleys were all imprisoned, the brothers Dudley. So, yeah, there's a lot of graffiti in that one. Hope you all found this little snippet of history interesting. Thanks very much for watching.